We just blew them away. Firepower, sheer firepower out of Detroit, the arsenal of democracy.
Out of all this firepower emerged a mighty warrior, little more than 3 feet tall, loaded with personality. The steel soldier Americans would never forget.
Can this be an automobile, men wondered? Looks more like a four-wheel Beetle, one of them said. No, I wasn't too proud of myself back there at the start when the Army first looked me over. Then they sent me out on the road. They tried to drown my motor, but my ignition was set too high for that. They tried to break my back on roller coaster roads. But when I held together, it looked as if the Army and I might somehow get along because they gave me a nickname.
They called it Blitzbuggy, Beetlebug, Leaping Lena, Puddle Jumper. But the only name that really stuck was Jeep. The answer to the Army's need for a general-purpose vehicle. One that could double as a general's limousine or a GI's mule.
There were bids put out by the Army. The design war had to be quick, was between Willys Overland and Ford Motor Company. And Willys won the design, but then they realized they were so versatile that they needed like 500,000 of them, and little Jeep couldn't build them, so the production contract, the big one, went to Ford.
Mass production. It meant only one thing. I was a success. I was getting turned out one every 2 minutes. 30 Jeeps an hour. What do you think of that? And I traveled with the guy I liked best, my pal, the soldier. Wherever he goes, I go.
In 1942, it was the Egyptian desert. Equipped with machine guns, Jeeps were sent into combat. Moving through hot sand at 60 miles an hour, they formed a flying wedge and blew up a convoy of German supply trucks. Where the Jeep went, wrote one observer, victory was sure to follow. By D-Day 1944, the Jeep was everywhere. Walter Munger remembers the assault on the beaches of Normandy.
I landed on the beach in a Jeep, and this was D+3. And from that moment on, we used to put the Jeep in four-wheel drive and leave it there because we were never on the main roads. We were always off in dirt roads or fields. It was really a lifesaver, especially in the infantry, because you needed a vehicle that was dependable enough to go anywhere, and I mean anywhere. Off the road, on the road, gullies, through water. Off the road, on the road, gullies, through water. You could get stuck with the Jeep. It'd be very hard to do. But all you had to do was take 5 or 6 men, they'll have little handles on it, they lift it up physically, and just put it back on the road.
They laid smoke for advancing tanks, scouted the enemy, evacuated the wounded, and brought essential supplies to the battlefield.
And it was a terrific vehicle for being near the front lines, because I swear you could talk to it and it would hush up. You couldn't hear the motor, you couldn't hear a squeak. You just couldn't beat them.
It was sort of de rigueur to have a Jeep if you were any kind of an officer. Every time you saw a war picture, there was Patton with his guns in his holsters. He was always in a Jeep.
General George S. Patton even customized his Jeep with a red leather seat and a pair of air horns on the hood. Everyone from presidents to movie stars wanted to catch a ride in this rough and ready little car. And when it wasn't chauffeuring celebrities, it plowed snow, brought good cheer, and provided comfort for the body and soul. It could even pull a 52-ton supply train at 22 miles an hour. The Jeep was the best buddy a GI ever had. Cartoons in the Army newspaper, Stars and Stripes, captured this love affair. The artist was Bill Malden. Walter Munger was one of his fans.
He was a GI's favorite. And of course, he used to knock the officers, but even they got a kick out of him because what he put in a picture was worth 1,000 words. I don't know if you remember Joe and Willie. They were his two characters, two infantrymen. And the conversations that used to go on between them, it was terrific. He just really had a hands-on view of the whole thing.
The first Jeep I'd ever seen was driven by the master sergeant, a battalion sergeant major. And he was very unhappy with it because it wasn't a horse. And I was fascinated by the four-wheel drive and everything about it. And I asked him at one point if a front axle broke or a wheel broke, do you shoot it? And he thought that was very funny. I drew a cartoon of it, and ever since then I've been eating out on that cartoon. It's the American Rolls Royce. It doesn't ride like one. It certainly doesn't sound like one. But it runs forever, too.
For Americans, this square-shouldered, go-anywhere, do-anything little car became more than a piece of military hardware. It became a treasured symbol of the American spirit that won the war.
The Museum of Modern Art had a display of the most beautiful cars in the world. And one of those vehicles sitting alongside the Accord and the Lincoln Continental and the Rolls-Royce and the Tall Bulago from France was a Jeep.